Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. It is Thursday, October 9th, another week of Let's Talk Power Live. Welcome. If you are joining me live, let me know that and thank you. Put it in a comment in the chat, not the chat. Put a comment in there. Let me know that you're joining me live. I'm so excited. I cannot see you, but you can see me. So welcome if you're joining live. If you are hitting the replay, let me know that. Leave me a comment and say, I joined the replay. I'm Dr. Tanji. I'm the CEO and principal consultant of Liaison Educational Partners. It's my pleasure every week to bring to you Let's Talk Power Live, where we talk about power in education in a very real and specific way. So we're going to get started with our conversation today. Last week, we really began this conversation about October. It's a very tricky time of the year, and a lot of times it breaks the culture of a school. So we began that conversation last week talking about how October doesn't have to break your culture. And this week, we're going to talk about some leadership traps that keep schools stuck. So let's go ahead and get started. But before we do, I'm going to ask you to do a thing. Go ahead, like, subscribe, and share this with someone else. Want to make sure that as many people begin to understand power in education is a real thing. In our time today, we're going to do a little bit of quick recap. I always do that. Then we're going to talk through some clear leadership traps and get you to some strategies and some power moves so that you don't have to get stuck throughout the year. But one thing I always want to bring up is this idea of power. And why do I talk about power in education? I talk about power in education because it is a real thing. It is not neutral. It is something that governs every relationship. And I want to share this quote with you by David Nyberg. And the quote is, education is the instrument of democratic designs, and it is no less the instrument of power. The control of information, the shaping of understanding, and the influence of judgment are critical elements common to democratic design, power theory, and educational philosophy. When we truly understand education, and not just education, but the process of schooling, we lean into what Nyberg is trying to say. Education is not neutral. It really does shape the minds of young people. So that is one reason I talk about power. It is real. The other thing people ask me about is, all right, Dr. Marshall, what actually is this instructional power thing? Well, here it is. Instructional power can be understood as an educator's use of their state, district, and building ascribed job-related authority to afford or constrain a student's access to learning. That's a mouthful. What does it mean? It means that as an educator in any or at any level, you make decisions in structured time and in non-structured time. And every single one of those decisions has the ability to open up opportunity or hold opportunity back. That's what that means. And those decisions are laden with power because you have the authority over someone else. So that's what this power idea is about. And that is why it's so important to really make power visible and the conversations about power visible, and to deeply understand what kinds of learning environments are created when we use our power in specific ways. And I outline the types of environments that the use of power leads to in my book, Understanding Your Instructional Power. Another thing, if you don't have it, go ahead and get it. And I'm going to give you a way to get that link and get access to the book later on in our time together. But let's go ahead and move forward. In case you missed last week, here's what we talked about. We really leaned into October represents critical shifts in your environment. right? Leaders often fall into protection mode as pressure mounts, as the demands increase, as the environment begins to shift, progress reports, parental pressures come, the buses don't come, all kinds of things, right? And all kinds of issues. Leaders might fall into the protection mode. Educators themselves feel their own October slump. They are feeling fatigue. They're noticing shifts in their students, right? Students are experiencing shifts in demand, and we can lean into agency development as a power move against this slump. Our instincts tell us that as adults, we have to take more control over our students during this time. But if you've been following this show, you understand, particularly at that secondary, middle school level, they need opportunities to develop, practice, exercise their agency. Their very brains demand it. So if you are leaning into more control, you are defying what the brain needs. So that was one of the power moves. I want you to lean into agency. And we want you to consider your words and go deeper with your cultural understanding. That's kind of what we talked about last week. So let's go ahead and get into what we're going to be dealing with this week. There are 3 leadership traps, and we're going to walk through each of these leadership traps. And I was so excited. I just got, I get articles and reports and all kinds of fun things to read. Just received a report from the OECD, the Office of Economic Development, that really gives us information about national trends and global trends. They had a teaching and learning international survey that just came out based upon 2024 data, where they surveyed thousands of educators across the globe. Very excited to share what I learned from that particular study. And then another study that really hones in on the developmental quality of relationships between secondary students and their leaders, educators, and building leaders that really can ensure that October doesn't break your culture. So let's go ahead and dig into these traps. First trap is the control trap. The next trap is the protection trap. And then the final trap is the performance trap. And with each of these, at the end of our time together, as I always do, we're going to lean into some very critical power moves to make sure you don't fall into those traps. And with each of those power moves, I'm going to connect you to the Talus report. And if you would like to actually get your hands on that report, let me know. Let me know in the comments if you're watching on LinkedIn or even on Facebook, however you're watching this. Send me a direct message and I will be more than happy to share the Talus report with you. So let's keep going. First trap, the control trap. This is really when we're looking at top-down leadership styles are correlated with burnout, with attrition, and limited collaboration. You begin to lean into putting up more structure, more strategies, more ways for people to check boxes, lean into compliance. The other thing that another control trap is trusting teachers as partners. A lot of times during this sort of tricky balancing act, we don't trust our educators as partners. We lean more into making sure that they have more structures, that they are given more protocols, that they have more items to check off on their list to make sure that they are doing them. The other piece is over clarification. You add more plans, you add more protocols, you add more structures. And then finally, one of the traps is you take back ownership when others struggle instead of coaching them to get them through it. That's a control trap. And the control trap feels good. We like the control trap because it is our place of comfort. But While the control trap might feel comfortable and we get compliance, it over time is going to erode confidence in both you as a leader and between your teachers and your students. Because as you might be mirroring more control, your educators will do the same thing. You know, there are lots of leadership channels around that really lean into, and I echo them. As a leader, you set the tone. So if you are that leader that leans into control during tough times, your teachers are going to do the same thing. And then your students are going to feel the pressure points. So that is trap number one. Let me ask you this question. What trap might you be falling into right now? Which of these four elements might you be doing? Are you over protecting? Are you taking back your ownership? Are you over clarifying? Are you adding more to the plate? That's a control trap. Because let's think about whether or not you are dealing with some trust issues with your staff and teachers. Maybe you don't trust them the way that you think you do. That creates that control trap. So that's trap number one. Let's go ahead and look at trap number two. Trap number two, over the protection trap. You're overprotected by leadership, right? And in the study, the Talus study showed that when that happens, when there's overprotection, meaning that the leader takes more control and ensures that they are the ones who are always making the final decision and protecting their teachers from challenging conversations and challenging issues, that actually lowers professional confidence and reduces a sense of agency. You step in to solve a teacher's or student's problem too soon, robbing them of the lesson in the struggle. And then you protect relationships from tension at the expense of truth. That's a tough one. What happens with the relationships? And we know in buildings, things get tense, right? There are lots of cultures, lots of buckets of people in relationship, in community with one another. And a lot of times it's easier to just smooth things out and help teachers just move on than it might be to help them work through. So if you are that one that's protecting relationships, ask yourself why. Are you creating an environment where educators begin to lean into favoritism? Because by doing so, you are signaling to them that relationship ease is more important than relationship productivity. That's going to reduce the professionalism in your buildings. So ask yourselves those questions. Where are you on the protection track? Are you the one that is lowering the professionalism? Are you the one that's solving too quickly? Or are you leaning into relationship ease? Those are some questions to really consider. Let's go ahead and get into number 3, the performance trap. Now, this one's tricky. This one's very, very tricky because when we think about performance, we understand that in education, it is really important that kids demonstrate knowledge, that they understand that they have to reach mastery, right? But then there's a balancing act here. And here's what we're learning. Overemphasis on the metrics, right? And teacher innovation and instructional creativity decline. So if you're overemphasizing the numbers and numbers and numbers, you're going to reduce creativity and instructional innovation. It happens, right? The performance feedback is disconnected from care, and trust leads to lost impact. Again, from a scales report that came out in 2019. And that scales report was specific to the middle school learning environment. That when performance feedback is just about the numbers again, without care, you're going to have lost impact on the very thing you want to have. And then the optics matter more than substance. Curating what looks good for external audiences instead of investing in what builds real capacity. Now, let's just be clear. You're in a district, you're in a state, your numbers are out there for the entire world to see. We can argue about whether that should be or that shouldn't be. It is what it is. And you're a public entity, therefore your numbers are going to be out there in the real world or in the world outside of school. However, what's important to understand here is that if the optics of what you're doing signals to the people inside your building that you only care about the optics, you're going to lose their trust. And their capacity building is going to be a problem, right? And that's really important. And when we talked last week about this idea of chasing data over depth, we want to make sure that's its own leadership trap, that we're chasing the data over the depth. And we're asking questions only about the numbers, and what might be driving the numbers is not part of that conversation. And that's really important. And then another thing here is on the comparison that leads focus from growth to judgment. Again, your data is out there. Everyone is going to see your data. They know what your school numbers are. But we want to make sure that when we're looking at our data in relation to other people's data, we understand context. We're building real information that leads to growth and not just judgment. That is a critical aspect of the performance trap 3. So the question now is, what do we do? What are some moves that as an effective leader you can take right now and begin to ensure that these are not the traps that are going to keep you stuck? You might be feeling that you're in some quicksand right now, and you might be feeling like things are a little bit slow or draggy. But we want to have some power moves. And each week, I give you power moves to get you through the journey and to help you improve your practice. That's what power moves are all about. And again, if you're joining me live, thank you. And let me know what power moves you might be using. If you've seen us before, but you're joining now, let me know. What are your power moves? And then I'm going to share some in a moment. If you're catching this on a replay, would love to hear what your power moves have been. So here we go. Let's talk about leadership power moves. First up, we want to do a couple of things. Number one, you want to prepare, right? Set the stage for success. You want to set the stage for success. We want to partner. We want to plan with, not just for. You may already be doing this, but the question on the partner side is, who are your partners? Are they always the same people, or are you seeking out voices that might have been left on the margins? We talk a lot about student voices on the margins. What adult voices might be on the margins you need to include? So, partner, participate, be present in the process, not above it. Want you to balance delegation. And in balancing delegation, it becomes a form of self-care, because you don't have to do everything, but you want to make sure that you're not absent. Okay. And in this participation, if you are a leader who is working to provide professional development and it is through an external partner, join your staff in the learning. Put your own phone down. Be part of the learning with your staff, and then pivot, adjust together. Be there with your staff, those voices you lean on, and some new voices, right? And from this TALIS survey, here's what it found. It shows that when teachers co-create school decisions, they innovate more, they trust more, stay longer. So control isolates and collaboration activates. We want to make sure that your collaboration is activated. You don't need to have a broken culture because October is getting oppositional in a lot of ways, and it is becoming much more demanding. We want to see this time as an opportunity. So that's power move number one, co-create. Let's dig in to power move number two. Power move number two, couple of 5 things here: perceive, probe, prompt, provide, and propel. Perceive, notice before you name. Take a step back and look at the environment. I call this walking with soft-soled shoes, where no one sees you coming, but you get to observe. Probe, ask before you assume. Ask more questions. Prompt, give guidance, guide and reflect, don't give direction. The more you prompt, the more you guide, the more your staff and students are able to come to some decisions on their own and make it easier for you, because then it's not seen as a top-down decision. Next, provide. Offer clarity and courage, not comfort. Comfort really can kill innovation. People get comfortable, they get stuck. Want to look at clarity and courage over comfort. And then propel, move forward together. Again, lean into those voices that you're comfortable with, and then push yourself to seek out new voices. And according to this TALIS survey, teachers feel most confident when leaders both challenge and support them. When feedback says, I believe you can grow, not you didn't measure up. So here's my question to you as a leader. What has your feedback signaled to those who are in your building? Have you signaled trust, or have you signaled not measuring up? Something to consider. Let's move on to power move number 3. And here we go. Anchor data in purpose, clarity, communication, coherence, and connection. Define the data goal. Data is everywhere. Earlier in the year, when school started, did a segment, a whole series on being data rich but information poor, setting you up to really learn how to use data responsibly. Data is everywhere. The numbers are everywhere. You can get data down to the kid, down to the question. There is no shortage of data. But when you bring your teams together, the question is, are you clear? Are they clear about what is going on, what you should be looking at the data at that time, having very structured data conversations? Because once you open that can of worms, it can go in any number of directions. So anchor your data in purpose, clarity, define the data goal. What is the purpose of the data? How will you be using the data? And what should they understand about the data? Next, communication. Share widely with as many partners as possible. But it's got to be clear. You have to speak in a way that others will understand what you're trying to get them to learn. My grandson is in the first grade, and they got some data earlier in the year, the beginning of the year data. Well, luckily, my daughter has, quote unquote, me to help her wade through some of the numbers. But what about those parents who don't have people in their lives to help them understand the data that's being sent home? Make sure you, as the leader, is able to share widely and clearly what the data means. A lot of data that comes out is from a third party. You know your context better than anybody. Share your data in a way that's going to support your community. Coherence, ensure alignment to what you are seeking to understand, alignment to mission, vision, standards, and goals. Have those conversations that are purposeful. And then the connection side. Consider the human side of the numbers. As a researcher, we have different forms of methodology to understand the worlds around us. We use mixed method approaches, a quantitative and a qualitative. Too often in education, we are relying on just the numbers. You need to have qualitative understanding because that's going to get you to the actual outcomes you want. So consider the human side. Ask the why questions, ask the how questions that include your students and your families. And then let's go back to the data. What do we learn from this survey? It warns that when data is used for compliance, morale drops. But when it's used for reflection and alignment, teachers lean in and innovate. Critical. They lean in for innovation. That's huge. And we've seen a lot when data conversations happen. The way in which the leader has the conversation really does shape how the teachers begin to allow themselves space to understand and grow. So those are our power moves for this week. Really want to understand that we're going to co-create, we're going to anchor in data, right? We're going to really be responsible and purposeful with our data. It's critical because you're going to keep getting these numbers and they're going to matter. So let's take a minute and let's recap. What have we talked about today? We have talked about leaders often lean into three major traps this time of year. But what research on the national and international is clear, when we prioritize collaboration, authentic agency, and purposeful use of data, schools thrive. Collaborate, agency building, purposeful use of data. Next, co-creating with teams, challenging with care, anchoring data in clear purpose. These are the power moves that keep leaders from slipping into power protection traps. That's a mouthful. Power protection traps. You don't have to do that. You want to co-create, challenge with care, and anchor that data. And then October doesn't have to break your culture. It can build clarity, courage, and community. That's what we've talked about today. And as promised, going to really lean into giving you some gems. I love my gems for your journey because it's really about practice. I'm a practitioner at heart. I believe in strong practice. Instructional power is my thing. So let me give you some gems. As always, for the last few weeks, been really leaning into leading beyond back to school. We have our upcoming leader webinar scheduled for next week. If what we've talked about today resonates with you and you want to go to the next level, go ahead, scan that QR code, get registered, go to our website. I can pull that website up for you. Go ahead and get our website up for you. There's our website. You can also go to our website and registration will be there for you as well. So if learning about these leadership traps this week and our conversation last week really resonate with you, go ahead, register for our webinar so you can get these leadership traps under control. And you will leave that session with a data to action tool that's going to really help you grow. Always have this anchor tool for you, building authentic student agency. It's going to help you co-create. It's going to help you challenge with care. And it will help you anchor in purpose, right? Because through this tool, you will know how everybody in your building really understands agency. If they're on the same page, if they are intentional, what's going on. go ahead, download this tool and get started with building student agency. As always, want to invite you to take learning into your own hands. Go ahead and get acquainted with our Instructional Power 101 self-guided module. It's 7 modules. Learn at your own pace, at your own time. You end with a certificate that you can present to your school, and it allows you to see your learning environment through a different lens. You will revolutionize your culture because the toothpaste about power will be out of the tube. So go ahead, check out Instructional Power 101. And then, as always, I told you earlier I was going to give you an opportunity to get the book. Let's see if I can get that banner up today. Yeah, here it is. That's how you can get your book. When you get your book, go ahead, take a picture, tag us, hashtag Instructional Power. Again, before we leave today, a couple of things. Have you liked? Have you shared? Have you subscribed? Make sure you do that. And thank you again for joining another session of Let's Talk Power Live. Can't wait to see you again next week.